Great. Thank you. Welcome. Hopefully you're enjoying VivaTech. This is my first time at VivaTech, and it is amazing, right? The energy level is just phenomenal. So hopefully you're enjoying it. I am. We have a great panelist today. I just realized as I was coming up on stage that I probably have the easiest job for the next 30 minutes. I get to ask the questions. Hopefully I'll try to make it a little bit easy, but some of them might be a little challenging, right? So, but before we jump into questions, let's just do a quick intro so you know who's on stage. We're going to go for about 20, 25 minutes, but then I want to come to you if you have any questions for the group. We're going to try to give you something to take away in all of this, because I know everywhere I go I see AI, so we're going to try to give a different perspective. Hopefully that's useful to you and that you can take away to your businesses, organizations, and whatnot. Okay, so I'm Qazi Islam. I lead PwC's Global Assurance Strategy and Growth platforms. Mark?
Mark Flavel. I'm a partner, an audit partner, and I lead Next Generation Audit, which is the transformation of our global audit business.
I'm Julie Leclerc. I'm at Danone, and I'm leading the global finance transformation.
Uli Homann, I'm part of the Microsoft Cloud and AI engineering team out of Seattle. So thank you for inviting me to Paris.
Excellent, excellent. So let's jump into this. So the first question I wanted us to discuss is this idea that anytime I pick up a newspaper or an article, I see this intense focus on efficiency and productivity as it relates to AI. And I keep asking myself the question, like, where's the value conversation? And when are we going to transition from productivity to value? I know people talk about it, but it's not entirely clear. So maybe, Uli, if I can come to you, like, how do you think about the trade-off between productivity and value? Is it an and? Is it an or? What do you see other organizations doing and thinking about?
So when you think about it, the AI revolution started very slow. And I think that was the right strategy to introduce these co-pilots that effectively are assistants to help people with their daily jobs. Now we are entering the second phase, which I think where we'll see the efficiency and the creativity moving forward to the next level, which is agents and agentic AI, which I think most people wanted to start with agentic AI, but the people weren't ready. The society wasn't ready with respect to what is AI going to do to us, for us, with us. And now effectively with the co-pilot phase running for 2 years, ChatGPT, those kind of things, you effectively now have people saying, AI is helpful, it does help me make my job better, and we can introduce the next thing, which is really going to focus on business processes, business process automation, and that really will drive the value. Just to give you a very concrete number, Microsoft is obviously doing a lot of work in consumer products, Xbox, Windows, Office, and that's pure cost for us. Whenever somebody calls, you ultimately already lose money. So whatever we can do to minimize the people cost in support, that's a very good thing. So we introduced a co-pilot for service into our support organization last year, and we were able to save $440 million last year simply because the agents are 7/24 available. So people love that. They don't sit in queues anymore. They don't have to wait. And they get to about 80-90% of the answers, which means now we can focus the human talent we have on really the hard problems that need hand-holding, human judgment, whereas the AI can deal with the standard stuff. And that's really high value for both us as a provider, but also the people that are trying to get support.
That's really interesting. I like the way you said that, which is the natural evolution of things goes from basic automations to complex automation to higher grades of value. Julie, is that how you see it as well? What's your take on this?
So first, I believe that's about defining the big rocks. Where do you target efficiency versus where you target growth, for instance? And in Danone, we've defined that science and innovation is something where AI will be transformative to help us leading and be competitive. In finance, and I'm finance obviously, of course, we are more in search of efficiency. But as finance people, our obsession is to be value creation athletes. So in any use case we would assess, of course, we would assess time spent, efficiency, but that's all about value creation and the value we do create to our partners.
Right, right. I like that because I like your idea of look for the big rocks, solve the big problem, because in the solution of the big rocks is both a productivity question plus also a value question. So Mark, I know you're digitizing, you're leading the revolution in PwC in terms of how we think about all of this and the audit.
Yep.
How do you
Yep.
see it?
I mean, similar, picking up some different, maybe slightly different themes is when I think about audit effort over time, traditionally we spend a lot of time at the start of an audit and at the end of the audit. And we spend a little bit less time in the middle in terms of where AI plays a role. The start is around data acquisition, information acquisition, preparation, ready to audit. At the end, we spend a lot of time documenting our judgments, our findings, and basically that compresses the time in the middle we have for critical analysis, client conversations, insights. So with AI, we're kind of flipping that U-curve. So we're seeing the data prep, we're seeing the documentation with the agents, with the co-pilots, and that leaves us more time in the middle, and that's where we add value, the critical insights, and the value-added conversations and sort of high-level thinking.
That's really interesting. Hopefully you're getting a sense here, which is you've got a technology-centric company, you've got a consumer products company, and you've got a regulated product, and how this interplay between productivity and value is playing out. I would ask you to think about your own organizations and say, okay, where is the rotation of our efforts? Where's the focus and where are we spending the money? Because I do think it's going to matter in terms of where you drive to. If you just focus on efficiency versus product versus value, you'll get the outcomes you're striving for, right? So if we're thinking about this juxtaposition, how you manage these two priorities, so maybe, Julie, if I could come to you, how do you measure success? Because I know that investments in AI can be somewhat nebulous or hazy in terms of returns. It's clearly important. We clearly see the benefits, or we can perceive the benefits. ROI is a big deal, I know, for many organizations. How do you deal with it in your organization?
So you got me. Indeed, ROI is our obsession, and as well as value creation. So panning the areas, of course, if I look into marketing, the consumer reach will be a key KPI we'll look at together with the value we do create on the P&L. On areas such as finance, the time spent obviously is one of the KPI we would measure. This being said, it's not an easy one to track.
Right.
So it's also, if you look at your claims, how much claim you can reduce and what amount does it create in terms of cash. If you reduce your DSO, for instance.
Right.
So it's about defining not the one KPI and a common one for every use case, but making sure for every use case you have the one which matters and measuring against it.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that, just to follow up on that, is there a consensus in the management team around the one, or maybe the suite that matters, suite of KPIs that matter?
There's not a consensus on the one yet. This being said, what we want to make sure is that every time we do measure, so we define from the beginning what would success look like, we define how we would measure, and we measure against it.
That's interesting. Uli, how do you think about KPIs, ROIs when it comes to AI investment? What advice would you give the audience around how to think about that?
So first of all, I don't. I'm a technology guy, so that's somebody else's problem. But all joking aside, the key thing is coming back to what Julie started off with. You can't measure in one fell swoop for all of the disciplines. Finance will have a different measure than software engineering, than HR, than Microsoft support, for example. They will all have different perspective. If I just look at engineering at Microsoft, we are now looking at a couple of measures. One of them is how much code or value can a single developer produce? There is speculation in the press that you can now get 10 times the output from a single developer. I don't know if that's true yet, but it's certainly an aim that everybody's looking at. So it's on the what is the output number, but then also what's the output quality? Because one of the things that obviously is important is security, quality of code, those kind of things. And AI can help the developer build better code and build more secure code. And from us, those are critical measures. Because, for example, in the traditional sense, we have a thing called bug count, where a single developer can only have 5 open bugs before he's not or she is not allowed to introduce new code into the tree. And if you have 5 bugs, they would have to finish the 5 bugs first before you can do new code. If AI can help you finish those bugs or not even introduce them in the first place, you can keep on being more productive. And that's obviously then a traditional measure, bug count, with AI-supported measures that are helping us become more productive, better code, more secure code. And again, if you then go to finance, different measures, because the finance business process, we, for example, used to outsource a lot. We are now insourcing a lot of those business processes in finance, for example, because we are writing agents that effectively go and automate what we used to have outsourcing firms do for us. So I don't think there's a single measure. I don't think there will be the measure. I think you need to really look at the discipline and what makes sense to measure for the discipline.
I think both you and Julie are giving solid advice, because I worry about organizations, including ours, where we are using old metrics to measure new things. When you think about ROI, that actually came about 100 years ago in the 1920s. This concept of ROI was coming about because of the second industrial revolution. We're in the fourth one, and we're still using metrics that are 100 years old. So I do think it's going to challenge us to think about things differently, and what should we measure and how we should measure it. So, but I know you spent some time thinking about
yeah, I mean, I agree with the comments. Like, it's a balanced scorecard approach, and I think, you know, value in terms of traditional metrics, finance, we all understand those. I think an interesting one is velocity, and I've got my VivaTech V-themed answer here. Velocity, I mean, I think that's an operational measure. It gets to your point on coding, Oli. It's the speed of decision making, the speed of product to market, the speed of turnaround time in the way that we serve our clients. Mm-hmm. And I think there's another one, if I'm going to I'll try and sneak the V theme in here again, that vitality. And I think that's about our people and the sort of health of our organization and our clients. We can measure that through sentiment scores, through people surveys. How do people feel about the technology? We used to talk about in audit transformation about change in communications. What we now talk about is adoption and network engagement. So we talk about, are we adopting the tools? Are they making people's lives better? Are people engaging with the tools? And I think, again, those are things that can be measured that AI brings a different dimension to.
I really like that, vitality and velocity, because those are what's becoming differentiating advantages for companies. So the question is, how can we measure them, and how can we make sure it's real, it's credible, it's believed, and it's consistently applied. So can I shift to people, because I think that's a big, you know, I've talked to many organizations, and oftentimes I get the feedback saying, I think more people are using it, but I'm not sure. And there's also this sort of skepticism around people are becoming more productive, but they're not sharing that they're becoming more productive, because they're somewhat, you know, if I say to somebody I got my job done quicker, then they'll just give me more work, right? So, and that's somewhat hindering the widespread adoption of AI and technologies, but also it's making difficult to evaluate the impact. So how should we think about encouraging more experimentation, more adoption, more use, and make it a bit more what I would call an optimistic view versus one that has anxiety and fear associated with it? But maybe, Mark, can I come to you, because I know the people element in an audit is so important, and unless the folks adopt AI the right way, a lot of the outcomes, the vitality and the velocity you're looking for will never come to pass.
Yep, yeah, exactly. In PwC, as you know, Kazi, we have My AI, which is a training curriculum that's global, it's consistent, it gets everybody up to speed on the basics. I think there's a point around just confidence for our people. Are they confident with the tools? And you need to give them the tools, you need to give them the sandboxes. So we have Chat PwC, all of our suite of Microsoft products, the co-pilots, etc. And then we have the agents, the agentic frameworks that we're introducing, letting people try the tools, upskill them. We have mandatory training courses to get them confident on the basics. And then we celebrate the successes. I think that's one of the important things. We have prompt parties, lunch and learns, lots of social recognition for people that are doing well and the champions that can inspire others. So I really think it's the sort of social aspects, the social rewards, and also we offer the financial rewards for the right behaviors as well.
Yeah, there's a saying from Stephen Hawking, which I love. He said this about AI. He said that the risk is not malice, it's competence. So he was worried about, the right tool in the wrong hands can do a lot more damage than people with bad intent. So it never left my mind when I think about training people, right?
And just add one more thing. I think like the AI first mindset, we use this tagline, AI first, asking our people, do they use AI in their personal and professional lives every single day? Are they confident? There's a moment to use AI personally and professional many times throughout our days, and are people doing that? Are we encouraging that mindset?
Right. So Uli, how do you How do you think about that dilemma?
Yeah, so I'm going to build on top what Mark was saying. From all of these bottom-up capabilities in terms of lunch and learn, and those things are awesome, need to be done. But I think the key thing is that the companies need to undergo a shift in thinking. Today we have either capital-intensive companies or people-intensive companies. I think what we will see is that the world is moving to capital and people-intensive companies. When I started at Microsoft in 1991, so a while back, we were absolutely a people-intensive company. No capital almost at all. Now we're actually capital and people-intensive because of the AI investments. And when you look at companies that are doing this structurally, meaning combining AI plus knowledge plus people, we call those frontier companies. These frontier companies are actually really companies that are structurally and strategically thinking about what are my assets? How do I bring them together? Knowledge and people you have. Then now AI comes along. How do you bring that into the blueprint of the company? And once you do that, you can really start to think about where do we go and how do we go and create more CEOs. There was a really interesting LinkedIn post by a colleague of mine. And she said, look, we need to teach junior people, even if they're individual contributors, that they now need to figure out how to delegate and how to manage outcomes, because agents will work for people. And people will ultimately ask agents to do something, and therefore they need to track, they need to manage the outcome, they need to make sure that their evaluations of agents happen and stuff like that. So they're managing a workforce. It doesn't happen to be a human workforce, but everybody will manage a workforce. And it's going to be an interesting change for companies to think about that as a model. And how do we train technology-oriented people, like software developers, all of a sudden to think about, oh, I have a small team. There's a team of AI agents that help me get my job done. The same with a financial analyst or with your auditing guy or person. How do they really delegate, drive outcomes, track them, and stuff like that? So I think that's going to be the interesting part for the change of the company's blueprint.
I really like that, the idea of a frontier company. It's different, right? It starts to get at the different perspective of how you kind of, the target model is different. So, Julie, how is this playing out in Danone?
So we could have seen it as a challenge, right? But I do see it as a real opportunity. So how to embrace this opportunity? The first decision we took is give access. 1 year ago, we had already 50,000 Danoners accessing AI through Copilot.
Wow.
Today, 95% of finance professionals are equipped with AI.
That's amazing.
So we pushed people into AI, and of course, it's about upskilling. So we launched our Data and AI Academy for Danone. Mm-hmm. This being said, you do need to walk the talk, and I'm a strong believer that doing is better than talking. So what we did is show the results. And I've been doing transformation my whole life, and what I find something difficult to engage people into transformation is the time to delivery. Mm-hmm. Because it takes a lot of effort, sometimes a bit of sweat, to get results done. With AI, the speed to results is amazing. So it helps us getting the sparkle and the excitement back so that people are getting into it, see the results, embrace it. So the trust is back.
I like the idea of sparkle, because I do think we need to celebrate the great ideas, because, enthusiasm and great ideas feeds on themselves, right? So I have one more. I was going to go back to the frontier companies. But before I do that, let me go to the audience. Questions from the audience.
I actually have a question directed to Uli Homann. So basically, you invested, or Microsoft invested, like around 13 billion into OpenAI, right? So that's like an innovative company that is at the frontier as well, as you just mentioned, right? With the people and the capital intensive. And that is enabled by Microsoft. So just as your first assessment, do you think it was worth the risk, and how?
So investments are always interesting. Again, we started the journey with OpenAI in 2017, when OpenAI was a sparkle in somebody's eye. But we saw the potential of the GPT models, GPT-2 at the time. And so we made a small investment. but we made a bigger investment on the Azure side because we provide the Azure supercomputing power that they needed to train the models for the next generation. So GPT-3 and then GPT-4 and so forth. And we have been building 5 generations of supercomputing capabilities for OpenAI, which now are being utilized for Mistral and for everybody else as well. So for us, this was a dual value. We were at the forefront of AI, learning with OpenAI, but at the same time, we were learning how to build supercomputing scenarios or capabilities for AI training, which means now Azure is the premier platform for training simply because OpenAI and Azure work together to learn how to do it. Because when we started, nobody knew how to do it. So we've had to learn it together, and that made the investment sensible. And then when GPT-3 came out, we decided that we would invest, increase our investment because we saw the value of what OpenAI will be able to bring. And obviously that has turned out quite nicely from a finance perspective. I'm sure Amy, our CFO, is very happy with the investment.
I really like that question. Thank you for asking that, because it's less about the amount. For me, Uli's answer was a lot about how you manage risk and how you manage foresight about where the industry is going, right? So I thought it was a bold move and it paid off, right? So, other questions? One more. We have time for one more question. Another one more brave soul. No? I have one just to wrap it up. Before I go. Nobody? I have one more question for sort of flash round before we call this to one application of AI that you use at a personal level that has changed the way you live. Yeah, just the way you get up and how you conduct your day.
Actually, there are 2. So I use Microsoft Copilot as the consumer version instead of ChatGPT, but I don't use search anymore. That's gone. I use Microsoft Copilot. That thing is amazing. So as a person, as a consumer. At work, I use Microsoft 365 Copilot with a new agent called the Microsoft Researcher Agent. That baby will change your life. Seriously. As an analyst, I'm sure the analyst agent is awesome. I don't use that. I don't do numbers. But the researcher is amazing. So if you get your hands on it, it will change your life.
Great. Julie, something AI that changed your life.
I wish I could have something different to say, but I'm using the same actually. I'm using Copilot 365 every single day, and I'm not sure if I would like to continue to work without it. Don't say it to my boss, but I love it. It does change the way I work.
So you're one of those getting the work done in half the time, huh? Yes, I agree. Mark?
All right, I'm gonna go with a personal answer.
Yes,
so I've got 4 young children. I've got an 11-year-old daughter who clearly knows more than me about any topics. So when my wife and I are talking to my daughter, we found it's very compelling when we show her the answer that ChatGPT will give on a given topic, as opposed to mom and dad's point of view of the world. So that is more compelling, whether it's about being healthy, whether it's about the use of makeup, whether it's about the impact of social media.
Math.
Yes,
it's like a third-party adjudicator,
ChatGPT
right?
is the authority in my house. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you. Please join me in thanking the panel.
Thank you, guys.